morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. My name is Ayuba Ilya, and yet today is another exciting day, and I'm joined by a colleague in the studio, sitting in for Zainab.
Shafiu Suleiman, sitting in for Zainab, as you said. Good morning, Nigerians, and thanks for joining us on the show.
Very interesting. Today is a beautiful day, giving you another opportunity to, wake up and get things done. Today is Tuesday, and so you do not want to waste this opportunity. There's a rush. People trying to get vaccinated, from what we gathered.
Nigerians, typical Nigerians, we don't, look at things critically, or we don't do things until we realize that it is almost dime minute, when people are
and usually this last minute kind of a thing comes with its own kind of issues. We are approaching December 1. That's the deadline that the federal government gave civil servants to get vaccinated or to be ready to face some kind of consequences.
December 9 is already here. December 1 is already here.
And it's already here now. And the problem with the last minute rush is that you begin to see all kinds of racketeering here and there.
That's right.
You begin to see people cutting corners. I don't know whether we do that deliberately, just to, because the truth is, before this last minute rush and all of that, you would ask the people doing the vaccination, were they there at the time that they needed to be there? Is it that people just refused to go for the vaccination, or they weren't there themselves? Because these are,
I think, all are factors, that are very much active. Sometimes you find the officials also not going there because people are not coming, so they also get to relax. And then Nigerians too, this habit, let me just wait. I can still take it, and not minding the fact that time is also going. So by the time you realize, it's already, the deadline is already here, so people start rushing. And one critical issue is even the crowd control, because you find out that in such kind of situation, you have to contain with large number of people. And here we are talking about the return of COVID,
Exactly. So, and it is in this situation that you begin to see, in fact, in the process of getting the vaccination, you're exposing yourself more. Because, because you have more crowd there now, uncontrolled. You begin to see VIPs will begin to show up, and then you begin to see preferential treatments.
That's right.
That's the picture usually. And, well, we hope that people are vaccinated, and that instead of getting the, I hope that we will not end up getting the,
contracting
the virus,
instead of the trying to get vaccinated.
Yes. All right, then, let's take a quick break and take a look at the events of 30th of November in world history. We'll be right back. All right, quite a number of things there, significant facts about our history the world over. Now, the first one you saw was Day of Remembrance for all victims of chemical warfare. That's a very, very sad history all over the world. In 1947, we have civil war in Palestine. And then in 1872, first international football match, held. Also in 1919, women cast votes for the first time in French legislative elections. And in 1974, India and Pakistan decided to end a 10-year trade ban. Now, two things stood out for me about the first international match that took place in the world, 1872. Very, very long time ago, hundreds of years ago.
That's right.
And we have seen how football, soccer, as it is called in some quarters, has become a major sport game all over the world that has been a uniting force. I mean, today, if you are talking about football for men, each time there's any, football match, international league of any sort, usually the atmosphere is different.
Yeah, that's frenzy, atmosphere, kind of, everyone is interested in. You can see people, eager, to close from work and then start, begin journey back home to go and watch. Some watch, at the theaters and what have you. So it's really, a game that has evolved over time and one of the very greatest, sporting events in the world. And you're talking about the uniting, factor. I mean, the fact that it unites the entire world. We're talking about over, I think, 32 nations mostly competing, in the sporting event. So that shows, the platform, how big the platform is, bringing all, people of the world
together of different races.
Of race, geographical locations and what have you.
And for us in Nigeria in particular, I understand how sport has been very, very instrumental in uniting Nigerians, bringing them together. Each time there's a match between Nigeria and other countries, you always see, Nigerians, come together and so excited and looking to see what was going to happen. So it's a major one. We also have in 1919, women cast votes for the first time in French legislative elections. Look at that, 1919.
Yeah,
that's more than 100 years ago.
That's it.
And you could see, participation of women in politics. In those countries. I think it's something that Nigeria needs to do better in terms of engaging women.
Very significant, in politics, looking at, and this also goes to show you that, for a very long time, women have been deprived, the rights, to vote. Because if we're talking about women voting at that particular point in time, what that means is that men have been dominating the scene. So for the first time, they were allowed to vote, which shows that this segregation or, the preferential treatment, or, dichotomy between men and women has been existing for a very long time. And so but then societies have also evolved, modern societies today, it is no longer an issue. But then developing countries like ours is still an issue because women, even though they constitute, significant percentage of the voting population, in most cases are denied. But then I don't think Nigeria...
Yes, and culture is playing a great role in that.
That's right.
I hope that all of that change, as we continue to evolve as a society. Now, we'll be taking a look at the dailies on Daybreak, talking about the stories that made the headlines this morning, shortly after this breather.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And now we will be taking a look at the first paper of the day, and that's Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Here we have the first story talking about IPOB's killing of 3 policemen, gruesome. That's according to the federal government. You'd find details of that on page 7. Also, we have Kaduna-Abuja train. Racketeers connive with officials, buy tickets with fake names. That's on page 3. The lead story on Daily Trust this morning: COVID-19, last minute rush as federal government bars unvaccinated workers tomorrow. You'd also see the riders. Government reviews travels, airports on alert over Omicron variant. We should resist unscientific travel restrictions. Ramaphosa. You would also find AFDB suspends investment forum. WHO raises fresh alarm. And then the pictorial there shows you the scene where you have people waiting to get vaccinated. I'm not seeing people with face masks, just like we earlier tried to establish that. I hope that in the process people don't contract the virus in the process of getting vaccinated.
That's right.
Now, you would also find below that Jos prison attack, 11 killed, 252 inmates escape. You'd find that on page 6. And then at the very bottom, you'd find Kano bride dies on wedding day. Mangal rakes in 11.8 billion naira, exits Owando. And then the last story there, security agents killed 13,241 Nigerians extrajudicially in 10 years. That's according to a report by the CDD. For details of that, you can grab a copy. But that's really an outrageous number. It means that if you are to do a breakdown of this figure, at least 1,000 Nigerians die every year.
That's huge.
You know, if you have to go by this, it means, yes, that 1,000 Nigerians die in the hands of security agents yearly. That's an alarming
big
number.
That's right. Wow. And it goes to show you how, security operatives, take the lives of ordinary, the citizens. In most cases, this abuses, and extrajudicial killing.
Well, we'll take a look at that more later on the program. We'll have a guest joining us, one of the people that released this report to discuss this very report. Let's take a look at other papers.
Yeah, okay. Next, I think we look at the Punch newspaper. It also has a number of stories here. This one says Electoral Act amendments. Buhari writes INEC seeks advice on direct primaries. Others. And there are two riders there. One says Commission has 7 days to respond to Buhari letter. And then the second one is saying President will consult all stakeholders. That's Buhari just attributed to Buhari spokesman. And then beside it, there is also a story that says FG's capital market debt servicing gulfs 2.18 trillion naira in 10 months. Report. That story can be found on the page, page 17 of the Punch. And then coming down, to the major headline, talking about the lead headline there. Omicron variant, that's the kicker. Omicron variant, travel bans looms as Canada detects Nigeria-linked cases. That's the lead story of the Punch this morning. And it has some riders. One says, federal government threatens steeper punishment for travelers with fake coronavirus vaccination card. And the second one said, sending samples to South Africa disgraceful. Shows NCDC lacks national pride, attributed to Tomori. There are other stories, below the front page pictures there. This one said, 9 inmates, 1 gunman officer shot dead in Jos prison invasion. I think that was captured, in the Daily Trust newspaper of today, as read by Ayuba. And the other one says, notorious Ogun cultists caught with gun during raid on hotel lodgers. Now, that story can be found on the page 5 of the Punch newspaper. And then lastly, 80 pallets of cocaine are excreted to raise 7 million for IVF. Lesser Hajj bound women arrested in Abuja narrates. That's quite shocking, you know. She
Really?
excreted 80 pallets of cocaine. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, you know, people do all kinds of things just to beat the system and to, you know, get, I would say, to get out what they want, you know, for their own gains and all of that.
And all of that was for her to raise, you know, some amount of money, as she said, 7 million naira.
It's risk, and you know the risk, you know, attached to this. I'm not sure if some of these people, you know, actually look at the risk attached to this. But I mean, whatever happens, they know what they were in for. Let's take a look at other stories, other papers. Now, the Nation newspaper this morning has some very interesting stories as well. The first one, not much of a difference from what we've seen on other papers. Officer, 9 others killed in custodial center attack. You see also 252 inmates missing. And that's on page 3 of the Nation newspaper. You'd find also the next story says APC chair slot not zoned to North Central, says party. You would find that story also on page 28 of the Nation newspaper. The next story there, World Bank hails Kogi over 2020 audited financial report. North's elders Ohanese clash over Nnamdi Kanu. You'd find also below the nameplate, woman excretes 80 pellets of cocaine. We just saw that story. Messi wins Ballon d'Or. That's also another interesting story. APC, PDP resume hostility ahead of 2023 with the riders why ruling party should not return by Ayu. That's the PDP chair. PDP is not alternative, says Apanu Dodehe. You would also find the next story there saying speculators sell hoarded dollars to cut losses, says Bankers Committee. The lead story on the Nation, Omicron COVID-19 variant Nigeria on the alert, says government. And you'd find also results of samples sequencing expected today. Entry points on the watch, reviewed travel guidelines begin Friday. Well, these are some of the major stories there on the Nation newspaper this morning. All right, let's take a look at the next paper.
Okay, I think so far.
Okay,
papers,
that's our last paper. All right. Well, we have in the studio Nuruddin Abdullah, editor, 21st Century Chronicle, to take a look at these stories that made the headlines this morning. Well, we are hearing that there's a panic. Omicron variant is already creating some kind of panic, you know, all over the world. We are also seeing that travel ban is looming because of these Nigeria-linked cases that were detected in Canada. So Nigeria is not an exception, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. But if you look at it from holistic point of view, I think there won't be any panic that will be worse than what we had when the virus struck in 2020. This, I think this is the second or third variant of the virus. You know, we had the Delta variant, even though the Omicron was detected in South Africa. And leaders, political leaders, business leaders, and even are not that so panic as they want to put it. If you listen to what President Ramaphosa was saying yesterday in Dakar, so he said South Africa in particular should be thanked for detecting this variant. It shouldn't be penalized. And he was warning, particularly the developed nations, not to shut their borders because so many countries rely on tourism or rely on travel-related activities for their economy. So I don't see that panic like Nigeria. Remember when the thing came, people didn't understand it well. There was lockdown, the economy was shout, everything. But as time goes by, 2,900 plus Nigerians died of the virus since it debuted last year. You understand? And that scaremongering attitude of some health authorities that people will be dying on the street and what have you. Maybe you got to look at our condition.
But
and spare us
I think that was just
nightmare.
that was just a projection of the worst case scenario, and preventive measures needed to be taken. Should we be regretting locking down the system and shutting down everything, at this point? Don't you think that it perhaps played some major role in bringing down the numbers for us?
Yeah, it did. But, I look at other effects. You shut down, in the West they can shut down. But the environment, the socio-ecology and the socio-economic ecosystem is different. If you shut down like they did in the West, for instance, people were living indoors. In Nigeria, we have, particularly where I come from, our homes are for sleeping, not for staying. You understand? We don't have common electricity, we don't have. There's no water. And so many other things. So I don't like the President Macky Sall of Senegal said yesterday during the China-Africa summit. He said Africa should devise their ways of tackling these issues. When there's Omicron, we shouldn't just be going
does Africa has any specific or special way of treating it aside from the standard principles, the safeguard, the principles of precautionary measures, rather,
principles
and all of that. The precautionary measures. Don't be overcrowded in one place. Do not exchange pleasantries like by handshakes and all of that. Wear face masks. Wash your hands regularly. These are the the safety precautions.
We
can't do any different.
We're talking about a shutting down. Talking about a shutting down of the economy.
And there were a lot of uncertainties around COVID when it came.
Yes.
At the beginning, even scientists were not sure what this was. It was a stage of more of an experiment, trying to see what is this really. And so
that is why I said Omicron or no Omicron. Some of these uncertainties have been settled. Now they were certain. So there are certain things. Nigerians understood so many other things. There are certain, even a shutdown, actually, that wouldn't have been. Maybe we have gone that far, for instance. And come to think of it, what are those things that we did as a safeguard? This thing emanated from South Africa, and our president was there. Some days back. So you see, looking at all this, I don't think there will be any panic that
we've seen the worst of it. That's what you are saying. We've seen the worst of it, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah, but we are already taking measures. For instance, the government is saying that we are perhaps, reviewing the travel guidelines and so on. We are also placing the entry points, under surveillance and what have you. These are things that we've been hearing in the past, even at the onset of the emergence of the COVID itself. How are you looking at these measures? Are they just pronouncements, or how effective are they?
Like I told him earlier, we, like they normally say in the local language, copy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hear authorities saying all this, but the biggest violators of all the surveillance. You remember when there was lockdown, total lockdown, and travel bans out of it. There were stories all over the papers. The number of officials that traveled out. Some of them even top government officials that violated all restrictions placed, you understand. That is one. And secondly, look at even these travel restrictions, this self-isolation. No, this official isolation in some hotels. We did the story. It was just an RNG stuff. Go to the hotels. You have to be quarantined, I say, for 7 days. What the hotels earmarked for that purpose, simply that you pay the 140,000 and you go home. You go into these hotels, there is no any semblance of isolation that is a COVID quarantine facility. People move around. And you'll go there for 7 days, you won't see any official. Provided you part without 140,000, you're good to go. So what we're saying here is enough of official pronouncements.
Okay, in that sense, we are seeing on the papers, like Daily Trust led with a story about the panic, in civil servants trying to get vaccinated, otherwise they'll be shut out of the service, by the federal government. And the deadline is tomorrow. And so we are seeing all manner of panicked people trying to get vaccinated. In that light, should we be going that direction?
The federal government is confused. That deadline is unnecessary. Mind you, in the last almost 1 year, federal workers from grade level 12 down are working from home. At the same time that this Omicron was detected in South Africa, safety measures are being implemented to safeguard the country from its effect. Then the head of service announced that these workers, who constitute the majority of the federal workforce, are resuming tomorrow. Can't you see the contradiction? Again, while the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19, headed by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, is saying that, okay, we have a deadline. The deadline is December 1st. The committee did not tell Nigerians how many centers, maybe even ad hoc centers, are put in place to ensure that these federal workers are vaccinated. They will end up, as usual with Nigerians, creating confusion, creating racketeering, and introducing another chapter of corruption. Because with this now, people will be desperately looking for this
vaccination.
Yeah, exactly. No, because it's simple.
The
It's a paper.
certificate, the vaccine certificate.
The certificate.
So you are opening a corruption chapter on it. So what they should have done is simple. Mike, level 12 down are resuming tomorrow. The same day you're saying that those who are not vaccinated will get access to the offices.
So we expect to see some kind of chaos.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, so we're talking about civil servants, for instance. What happened to the larger majority of Nigerians? I don't know how you're looking at, the government's ability to reach out to the people. We've seen some level of relaxation in terms of creating awareness, even on the impact of the COVID. And now that we have a new variant, which is also very deadly. What's your assessment of government engagement of the people with regards to telling them, this is what this Omicron is, and these are some of the devastating effects, and perhaps these are some of the measures that we need to adopt?
Like I said, if you travel out of Abuja, maybe Lagos and Port Harcourt, go to Kano, for instance, nobody's talking about COVID. Why? The same people that should, under normal circumstances, observe these protocols are violating them. You remember there are instances where when even lockdown or what if you ban on mass gathering are taking place, some government officials are performing weddings and what if you. That's the problem.
So there's no sincerity.
There is no sincerity, and that gives Nigeria is a very sensitive person, a typical Nigerian. So if this thing is real, why is this thing happening? So, like I said, after the lockdown, after the fears, people are relaxed. The government is relaxed. What the Boss Mustafa's committee is doing is dishing out statistics. Nothing else. Even the ban, go to the airports. The whole thing has been turned into mass racketeering We see even videos, MM2 in Lagos, even in Abuja here. You come with your passport, if you can part with some monies, you are good to go.
Do you see some imperatives? Now, the imperative of perhaps reviewing our strategies, because fundamentally, beyond even enlightenment and awareness, we perhaps need to review what we've done in terms of providing the necessary equipment that are required, to handle emergencies, like the oxygen, and what have you that we require at the hospitals, the bed space and so on and so forth. Before the COVID, we know the kind of health decay in the health sector, and now government has intervened. We are not even going back to review that intervention to see how effective it is. Didn't you think this is also another big challenge?
Don't even go to, you're talking about oxygen. What of the testing kits?
The kits, right.
It costs more than 30,000 to get tested now. How many Nigerians can afford that? Just the testing. Don't even go to the oxygen thing. So what it simply means, the government should be serious. The government should be serious. 1 year after the lockdown, like you said, let's look at the health sector. What has changed? Is there any improvement in the budgeting system? Are we building more infectious disease centers? Are we retraining more staff to cope with that possibility? Because when this thing is going to strike, we will get notice. It just drops. You understand? So, exactly. So these are the issues. And okay, the vice president has been saying, okay, we may have maybe a vaccine, a made in Nigeria vaccine or whatever. But how far have we gone? Like, go to the hospital and see oxygen, how much it takes. And go around the country, minus Abuja, Lagos. These special facilities meant for quarantining or even treatment. Nobody cares about it anymore. So unless government take this thing serious, then Nigerians will think that we're just joking.
And the fact that the disease is also evolving, we're talking about coming up with a vaccine. How will this distort, our arrangement? Because you have to also upgrade. That's what it means, since the virus is upgrading.
Mm-hmm. First and foremost, the testing stuff. How many Nigerians are tested? That is it. I tell you, you need minimum of 30,000 naira to get tested. It's about 36. How many Nigerians can afford that with the prevailing economic realities? So I think that is the starting point. Maybe we have lower numbers now. The NCDC, dish out lower numbers because many people don't have the capacity to get tested. What if only 1.7% of Nigerians got the first dose of vaccination. Just about 3-point-something million fully vaccinated.
Quite a minute number.
Out of 200 million population.
All right.
So we have a long way to go.
Very long way to go indeed. Now let's take a look at other stories. On the Punch newspaper, we have this story about, it says, despite FG's revenue crunch, NIS, I believe Nigeria Immigration Service, projected passport revenue drops by 96%. What exactly is going on around this? Maybe we should, highlight. There's also this problem about some Nigerians abroad, whose passports have expired and then are unable to renew and all of that. What exactly, are we not getting right here?
The issue of passport is a very long, complicated issue, and it's simply a microcosm of the Nigerian problem. For years, we have been reporting that issue. That is one. On the other hand, many Nigerians abroad, because most of the Nigerian missions and embassies are closed for the COVID. Recently, I read a story about Nigerians in Kuwait. The issue is simple. There was lockdown, so the embassies don't work and what have you. But more importantly, it's about even the availability of the passport itself. It's a story of if I say corruption, I'm not mistaken. A company was given this contract to produce the passports. Iris, during the Obasanjo regime, it's a 5-year contract. It ended with the caveat that before the expiration of that 5-year contract, Nigeria will be producing the passport, manufacturing it here in Abuja with the factory. But that did not happen. Erodo Jonathan regime came, the same people remained. The same passport was being produced in Malaysia. Listen. Talking about the local, and we are accessing forests. On the other hand, they said that we had a minting company. As of the time Obasanjo came, gave out the contract to those people with their Malaysian technical partners, the printer and minting company didn't have those facilities to print the security aspect of it. But now they do. And this same private company was accessing forex from CBN. So I remember Emefiele had to step down and say, no, we can do this thing, or at worst, sucks your forex elsewhere. So that was the major problem that brought that unavailability of the passport. But up to now, the same contract has been there. It's the same company. Your data is run by just private individuals. You understand? And so many Nigerians talk about it, but like I said, so the idea of reaching out to one or two and the matter is dead. So that is it. This thing is not being produced locally with forex going to the roots now. They have to access forex to do it. And it is being done in a foreign land, even though it's a security matter. The data is being kept by a private company here in Musetu.
Is it even right in the first place to subject such very vital information? You're talking about security information.
It's a Nigerian problem.
To another clime.
No, it's a Nigerian problem.
And what happened to punitive measures if people, are caught, in a wave of corruption, on issue that is very critical and central to Nigeria, and then nothing happens, with all the authorities, the agencies that need to go in and investigate.
Don't forget, that's so powerful. Every Minister of Internal Affairs would talk. And before you know it, it's settled and nothing happens. This company has been there. Dozens of stories, dozens hearings were done by the parliament, but nothing happens.
And now we're seeing that it's backfiring. I mean, there's a drop in revenue, for the Nigerian Immigration Service, by 96%. Well, we'll keep tab on that story and keep following it and see how, it all turns out. Well, let's take a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll touch some more on the dailies. Please stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the TrustTV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search TrustTV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. We're reviewing the stories that made the headlines with Nuruddin Abdullah, editor, 21st Century Chronicle, here in the studio. Now, one other story that made the headlines from yesterday and even till today is the one about Jos prison break, where we are now seeing that over 200 inmates have escaped. Some deaths were recorded as well. What's your reaction to this yet again another tragic, incident in our history? This is not the first, it's not the second, it's not the third. In fact, in the past few years, we've had like 12 of such incidences. Are we learning any lesson from this?
I don't think we are. You remember what happened in Kogi? You remember what happened in Oyo? Just some months ago. Some gunmen will come, overpower the security around the facility, got in, released almost everybody. The ministry will come here and they will be publishing the pictures, smoke shots of some inmates on the film. It happens not once, not twice, not thrice. So what actually is the problem? Nigerian prison generally has a capacity of about 70,000 some. More than half of those are waiting trial. So since we cannot secure these facilities, apparently, then what happened in Jos? It was just like a drama. Government trapped on the view and 10, 11 people dead. 2 personnel, the gunman, and some inmates. Over 260 escaped. They were able to recapture 10 as of yesterday.
And the sad thing is probably among these inmates that died, there are probably those who were just there not because they committed any crime, maybe just
awaiting trial.
Awaiting trial.
But what does that say, with regards to our justice system, especially the criminal justice system? Many have said, it's about time we review this because we cannot continue to, saturate the prisons, correctional centers with people who who ought to have been, their cases ought to have been dispensed and then they leave because all of this also boils down to the overcrowding and what have you.
Yes, there is a presidential committee on the congestion of the prison. And I think some couple of thousands were released by this Buhari administration. But I think they need to work faster. And more importantly, the other aspect has to do with the prosecution. Let me give you a small scenario. If an IPO who is in, let's say, Utako police station is handling a case, and he is transferred, let's say, to Kubwa or Gwagoleda, that case suffers. Because they will tell you he won't be coming to court. It won't be assigned. And Mike, you may be already a suspect. Has been remanded in prison custody. That suspect will be there for 10, 20 years for a minor offense. So that is it. And even the judges, the criminal justice system itself need to be reviewed so that most of these cases should be dispensed with. And I don't know, maybe with the paucity of funds, most of these prisons, were built by colonials, like the one on Oyo. They simply pushed the walls and they were in.
Virtually almost all of them, are colonial legacies, so to speak.
You understand? So it simply means that it's high time to start reforming not only the system itself, the infrastructure. The National Assembly is saying that the other time, and they were enraged by this, saying that the prison guards should be armed with submachine guns. I don't think that is the best way to do it. Like even in that of Jos, you see that if you read the spokesperson of the custodial service saying that DSS is a combined force of 40 people. So actually what is happening? Are criminals becoming more daring? Understand?
Yeah, you can imagine, yeah.
Like you said, we have to look at the way and manner magistrates, lower courts are sending suspects to prison to awaiting trial for those years. Should be looked
minor
into.
Offenses in most cases.
Minor offenses, two fighting. Neighbor and neighbor fought over tap water out of it. And this guy had to, and that's it.
So apparently Nigeria is not rising up to the 21st century challenges. The structures from decades ago are the same, and now we are confronted with challenges of today. We are confronted with people who can dare the prisons and go there, and all of that. What are we doing to change this? Are we really doing anything tangible to change this narrative, to rise up to the occasion of the day? Because apparently even criminals have evolved.
Yes, it's normal, when you have a system in place, some bad elements will work hard to circumvent it. But unfortunately, like you said, our system is archaic, while the criminals are becoming more sophisticated. That's why they will launch a daring attack on a facility at the headquarters of a state. And they will get away
surrounded by a number of security outfits.
You understand? So maybe, two things. This prison should be decongested in the first place. Sending people to stay there for decades for minor offenses, that thing should stop. The police or the state itself, should actually revamp their own prosecutorial system and capacity. It was the case of Igboho. There are some people who were arrested when the DSS raided Igboho's home in Ibadan, you remember. In one of the sittings here in the Federal High Court Abuja, some DSS personnel were telling the court that they couldn't attend because the case file was stolen from them while they were coming to the city. They boarded a commercial taxi, what they call along, and they were robbed.
Can you imagine that?
You can see how ridiculous that is.
Sounds very ridiculous and could be true.
Well,
very ridiculous, but could be true.
Right.
But anyways, we'll have to end the discussion here.
Okay, I wanted to ask this question. There is also this perception, of the government that there could be political motivations to all of this. Looking at the sequence of the attacks and correctional centers and so on, the Minister of Interior was quoted recently as saying that some people are just out there to ridicule the government and what have you. Is that tenable?
That's funny. Because, okay, what is he doing? Two things. If you know a problem, then you know almost half of the solution of that problem. So when you know some political elements are out there to ridicule your government, doesn't mean that you should go to sleep. Two things. Don't give them the opportunity to do it. Reinforce security around those facilities, one. Arrest them, since you know them. Bring them to face the law. Nigerians will help you, but don't be a complainant.
All right. Well, we have to end the discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the stories that made the headlines this morning. We've been speaking with Nuruddin Abdullah. He is the founder, 21st Century Chronicles, here in the studio. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you.
All right. Now, we will go on a short break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at yet another disturbing story. We are talking about over 13,000 Nigerians killed by security officials in the last 10 years. And that's a report by CDD, and they will be joining us to discuss this issue. Austin Ayegbe, member of the CDD, is coming to talk about this report with us here in the studio. You don't want to miss that. Please stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the TrustTV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search TrustTV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. TrustTV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. Now we are joined by Austin Ayegbe, Senior Program Officer, Center for Democracy and Development, to talk to us about a story that got us shocked. It's a huge revelation, a report that was released yesterday by the CDD, Democracy Watch report, in particular talking about how Nigeria has fared in the past 20 years since the return of democracy in 1999. And we saw something that was very interesting this morning. First of all, let me welcome you on the
Thank
show.
you so much. But you can go directly to what you saw.
Yeah. Over 13,000 Nigerians, were killed by security officials in the last 10 years. Going by that figure, it means that virtually every year you have, in the last 10 years, every year at least 1,000 Nigerians are killed by security officials. So
if you make it in that kind of blanket word, it will look as if there are targeted killings. These are part of extrajudicial killing, torture, human rights abuses that accumulate into that number. It's not a situation where security personnel went on the street on rampage and just killing people. It included all of the crises in the northeast, the ones in the southeast, the southwest, and all of across the federation. Only the northeast alone, with the war against terrorism, you imagine what would have happened there. Those numbers added up to that 13,000 plus. It's a data set we have consistently monitored and putting faces to those numbers, not just in numbers per se, but having that you are able to verify each number. Actually, the number would have been more, but when you cannot verify them, you cannot say it. People will say, we used to have 5 people in this family, two were killed. Okay, what are their names? What happened to them? If we cannot trace it to the source and eventually what happened, it didn't add up to that number. We didn't just want to just pull out numbers unnecessarily.
So these numbers were verified and they were actual people that you investigated? Actual
names of people cumulatively. CDD, Human Rights Watch, of course other organizations who does the same thing. We were watching each other. So when these pull up numbers, we want to go and investigate it. So when we pull out numbers, they also try to verify those numbers. The global rights of this world and all of it. So there are faces, names, actual names of those numbers. Not in this regime, so we don't look at it. In the last, if I say 2011, up to this moment, the killings by extrajudicial wise, detention, people who went to detention, you can't find anymore. The ones in Anambra State, for example, had a huge number. You would imagine how. Why would a state like that in the southeast have that kind of huge number? But the revelation came after when the NSAS probe was going on. That there were people who were arrested, taken to detention, and never came back. They are not in the detention room, and they are not in the ward. So where are they? They've been buried somewhere. Faces. Their mothers and fathers continue to find them. They can't find them.
Yeah. Look at the larger picture, the essence of this report. We're looking at 20 years of democracy in Nigeria, the return, uninterrupted democracy as we call it. Some say perhaps civil rule or so. I've also heard you in the report referring to civil rule. Perhaps you would elaborate on that later. But then, overall, what did you find with regards to democracy in Nigeria? Is it working for Nigeria?
Well, let me begin by saying that democracy is a work in progress. There is never a strong democracy. Even the American had what they called the insurgents recently in Capitol Hill, where you would have imagined that, why would that happen in America? That people went to the seat of power, to the seat of democracy, the symbol of authority, the symbol of democracy, which is the lawmaking arm of God. That's the symbol of democracy, because those are the representation, the representative guarding a place to advocate, make law for the good governance of a country. You see people en masse in a stampede, and we know today that people were killed, that people went there with guns. That is America, a democracy that you will say is very old. There is no old democracy. There is no young democracy. I also don't want to use the word that Nigeria is a young democracy. No, there's no. I mean, there are 90-year-old people in this country who are poor, and there are 20-year-old who are rich. So it's not about your age; it's the way you operate your democracy. Back to Nigeria. Since 1999, when we returned to democracy, fine, people were so optimistic that coming from the military regime, coming from the Decree 2s of this world, the Decree 4 of this world, where free speech, you cannot say anything against the government. In fact, you dare not say anything at all. So the decree allows government to detain you without prosecution. And that we've left those era. The days of General Muhammadu Buhari of this world, the days of General Babangida of this world, the days of General Abacha of this world, moving from those era where an individual would just be missing. A media organization reported cases, and the next thing you can't find the journalist missing. That no trace. The way the journalist was not arrested, but missing, because there's a difference between arrest and missing. So, where is Kunle? He was here yesterday. Where is he? You can't find him. Just like the case that happened to the journalist recently, even though that case is still on, suddenly got missing. We know about the delegate of this world who got a letter, and that was it. We know of cases, countless number of cases in the military regime. But the moment the democratic regime was inaugurated, there was a high hope. Oh, we are going to have free speech. We are going to have human rights. Nigerians are going to respect our rights and all of that. And we saw that with the Constitution, that the Constitution provides certain bases of rights. Right to liberty, right to freedom of association, right to all of those rights. And there was that hope. But between 1999 and date, all of those hope had gone down. Nigeria was rated 2013 as the worst country where media was abused. So the country continued to decline in terms of democratic architecture, in terms of strengthening this model. Right now, if you are engaged in political dissent, you are in trouble in the present day Nigeria. Few years ago, those who were on the other side, who were accusing the government of in power, and suddenly now took power and now realized that, oh, we didn't know that this is the way it is. As my lecturer told me some years ago, he said, you don't understand. There's a difference when you sit on that side and you sit on this side. And he told me 6 and 9 is not the same. He wrote 6 on the ground, and I was seeing 9. And he told me, where can you see? I said, I see 9. He said, no, it's 6. So we got into argument. So we changed the dynamics, and he came on this side, so I went on the other side, and I saw the 6. So he was seeing 9. He told me that when you are on this side, there are things you can never see. That when you now get on the inside, the whole narrative is different. That is what explains why those who were on this side, who were shouting rights abuse, who were shouting poverty, who were shouting corruption, suddenly got on the other side. They see a different figure.
And they forgot.
They forgot what they did, and they were on the street. Now they don't want people on the street in the same democracy.
Okay, is it about the structure? Is it about the actors? Or is it about, the environment?
Structure, I don't want to percentile them, but let me put percentage. Structure is the greatest challenge of this country. Back to the U.S. model I just talked about. What dealt with that Capitol Hill attack was the structure. Otherwise, if Donald Trump was a Nigerian, he would have been president for life. But the structure kept him. The system, kept him. And everyone, including members of his own party, said, no, we can't do this. We can't. And everyone stood on the path of justice and progress. Fast forward to Nigeria. Because our structure is so weak that in Nigeria we have strong men, strong women. In 2009, Obama was talking to people in Ghana. He refused to come to Nigeria, but it was in Ghana in 2009. He said Africa's challenge is that there are too many strong men and weak institutions. One man or one woman comes into a system. If that fellow is bad, the system goes bad. If that fellow is good, it becomes good. That is why, a bit of digressing, if you look at women political representation, You need a strong man to then appoint women. And that's why we can say that, 2011 we had more women, 27 we had more women. What has happened? If the will of the person in power cannot guarantee that, it goes down. The same thing is happening. Until we strengthen our systems, this institution, we don't build system around individuals. The greatest challenge of Nigeria today is that power about this country resides in one individual, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I know that after God is government, but in the context of Nigeria, it becomes worse that when power and everything reside in one individual, the system can never work because that system is then subject to that individual.
How do we strengthen this structure that we are talking about? For instance, some people have said, look, in our laws, there are certain clauses. In fact, most recently, we are hearing that the House of Representatives kicked out a bill that was meant to give Nigerians the power to demand accountability from their government. There are certain provisions, rights in the Constitution that you cannot sue, you cannot go to court for, and all of that.
Those rights are not justiciable.
Are they problematic to this structure that we are talking about?
So the Constitution itself is a problem. That's where the problem starts from. When you put rights, right to food, you put all of those sweet, chapter 2, chapter 4, and you say these are Nigerians, these are what you need. And then you go to court and say, no, they can't be justified. So now let's create another law to ensure that they are justified. You say no. Until we adjust to say when you have written down rules, follow them to the letter. When freedom of association is guaranteed by the Constitution and someone uses another act, internet falsehood they wanted to come up with, social media bill they wanted to come up with, or you use the Cybercrime Act to then say, yes, there's freedom of association, but Terrorism Act will not allow you to gather because we feel that you are discussing terrorism. You undermine the very grand norm of the country, which is the Constitution. The Constitution empowers every Nigerian. But that right, also, although you are going to ask the next question, is that where your right ends. That's what I'm right. But that right, first of all, enjoy it. When you cannot enjoy that right, it becomes a fundamental problem. And that is where we are. So when the Constitution empowers the police and then gives the police structure that for you to have a police IG, it must be appointed by a president. A president appoint the INEC chair. The president, this is an executive position guaranteed by the Constitution, allowed. That's part of the issues. If a president appointed the commissioners of INEC, the president has interest. Don't forget the conflict of interest we always talk about. The president is the one to appoint the Chief Justice of the Federation, even though on recommendation of the NGC. But he appoints. You then see, are we not? So the president that went through an election that the people voted for, is that now the one doing all of this recommendation. That does not mean that's not the way it is in the United States. But because of our weak system, we've got to find a way to put bulwark in a way that curtails certain of those actions. We were at a time when the president submitted the names of his aide to be a national commissioner. And we are wondering, why? This is your personal aide that we all know. Elsewhere, or in, I don't know, I said there's no strong democracy, maybe elsewhere, in stronger democracy, that will not happen.
Is it a case of perhaps sitting down to look at this democracy we are copying? Because some say, it doesn't suit our contemporary realities. We take, from the United States, for instance, and other democratic states, hook, line, and sinker. We need to tinker with it to suit our current realities. Do you agree with this submission?
Partly, no, but partly again, you may want to say yes, because we've copied without knowing what we actually copied. Somebody was writing an exam in an examination hall, and it was copied from another fellow. He forgot, he copied the matriculation number and copied everything. So that would be wrong to copy without truly understanding the dynamics. However, the reason I said no, in most parts of Nigeria, what we now call Nigeria today, Nigerian state of today, are made up of people who have democratic tenets in their regimes. in the southeast, for example, you need to run, in fact, you run elections, so to say, maybe not kind of election we have now. In the northeast, the feudal system, in fact, the caliphate system, there are certain autocratic, democratic norms. Yes, there are autocratic, that the king has the power of life and death. But that's what we now also have. The president has the power of life and death. But there was certain conditionality where people meet. There was that meeting already, which means it has some level of democratic tenets. So what we need to do is to make a civil or civic system, what Peter Eke will call the civic and the primordial culture. What we did was we copied all of the civic culture without necessarily aligning with our primordial system, wherein those in the rural area or in the villages, village system was how we run our system. Those in the rural area or in the villages who make laws, because you have to go to the village square to take a decision. Even the king, once the village square have taken a decision, it must be implemented by the guards of the king. But today, we have now built up a wall around this actor who are making this decision, and we took them away from these villages and bring them to a city center and build a wall around them that if you are going to National Assembly, you can't even get in. Do you know in National Assembly, that place you have the ark, that, I don't know what they call it, that symbol, is supposed to be a venue for protest. How many people have access to that place? In fact, you are pushed out by security forces. You never get access. That place is where you submit petition.
Directly.
That's directly. That was what that place was made for, built for in 1999. Recognizing that people, these are the representative of the people, they have to submit petition. So you go there, you drop your petition, address it to your honorable member, your senator. But that doesn't happen now. It doesn't.
How many people even know that that's what the purpose of that place is?
Because those who took power eventually realized that if you allow people to be talking, shut them up. It's better they don't talk, because they talk will be in trouble, because they are going to be empowered. And in fact, they are already empowered. And before 1999, it was the civil society that fought for democracy. A lot of members of society killed journalists, media, killed.
All right. Now, are we learning lesson in our journey of democracy from 99 to date? A classic example, recently, the hashtag #EndSARS issue. There was a report in that respect that still remains controversial, based on what different quarters are saying, about the report and all of that. But let's look at the context of the protest itself. What we know so far is that we had unarmed Nigerians who were holding Nigerian flags, who were singing the national anthem, and who have been said to not constitute any form of threat, and then we had deployment of the military, in those things, in those scenes. At least those are settled facts. What have we learned from the reactions that we have seen, on the #EndSARS
So
report?
you said they were not considered threats. So let me prove it to you beyond reasonable doubt. Our lawyers will say they considered threat to those bourgeois because they were occupying a place where they were collecting money. So a day two without that collection was a threat to those individuals. But they were constituted threat to no Nigerian public. Even though people argue that they could have been more organized in a way, that there were pregnant women who wanted to access the hospital and all of that. So let's put that aside.
I'm actually coming to that.
Okay, you're coming exactly. So I'm quickly going to address that. So this is it. We haven't learned anything. The #EndSARS protest was not about police per se. It started with police brutality. The police responded. The president responded. SARS was bound, and all of the structure. Part of the demand of #EndSARS was police welfare, which means people realizing that the police welfare was down. When we criticize police of taking arms on the road and all of that, taking bribe on the road, we've also forget to ask certain questions. How much does a constable earn? How much is truly the money? The policeman buys his own belt, his own uniform. It's everything you see on him kitted. Apparently, the only thing he doesn't buy may be the gun. What you need is a uniform, not necessarily the gun. a police officer that we respect, that's supposed to be a symbol of authority, is not looking for money to be kitted properly, and salary is not enough for him or her, he therefore need to meet me by whichever way. And that is what has happened to the Nigerian police force. The Police Act 2020 is aimed to resolve those challenges, including setting up grants. Don't forget, the Police Act of 2020 is also a product of agitation by the Nigerian public. So EndSARS was not to throw the baby and the bathwater away. It was to fix the system. And it gradually went into what they call end bad governance and all of the hashtag that went in. But it was somehow when people went to tell Mr. President that the thing was against him, I would never have assumed that Mr. President will come up and say they wanted to remove me from office. That was never close to the agitation. And that is why the denial is still on today. The panel sat, produced a report, whereas we're now here, no, maybe it's fake, it's not, it's this. For me, if I was in the federal government or advising the federal government, I will humbly tell the president, there is nothing wrong to say I'm sorry. The man that say I'm sorry, even though he's right, is wise. Let's get this thing out. Let's put it behind me. Let's put it behind us. That never again will this kind of action happen. Never again will people on a peaceful assembly be attacked with security forces.
Okay.
With live bullets, not rubber bullets.
Okay. In your report now, do you see a correlation between the condition of our security officials and the level of brutality that we see, the way in which they relate with members of the public? Do you see a correlation between
Very strong correlation, because the militarization of the era of military rule has not been pulled out from certain of those, again, rules. For the very first time last year, we had a police rule that has now changed. So they were still operating with a rule set by the colonial master of 1948 that came in with the military. So those rules were still guiding them. So we are now in civil rule, but we are operating military rule. We are not in civil regime or civil rule, but we are operating military regime. So the document that help you, those torture that is embedded in Police Act, that allow electrification, that allow block work and all of those things, tear gassing and all, they were in the military regime rule. But that rule had not changed. You are still operating it. There's a strong correlation. The way our operators of this rule and the system works. So when you see a typical police officer, there was a documentary of the police college in Lagos. If you watch that documentary, every Nigerian should pull money together to improve Nigerian police force. There is nothing wrong, all of us Nigerians putting 100 naira on the table to say we need to improve the police force. Those who are recruited into the police force, the kind of agony they go through, that's not recruitment, for Christ's sake. That's not.
Right. Talking about democracy, it comes with the costs, just like we're talking about now. The freedoms, and so on, the rights, and so on. And then we are beginning to see manifestations of people, trying to actualize these rights from, politically motivated secessionist agendas or, threats and so on and so forth, to even the rising insecurity we are seeing today in Nigeria. So I would say substantially, has to go with, part of the price we have to pay for democracy. If it were a military regime, it would have been a different thing altogether. How do we reconcile these issues?
I love when you use the word comparing the democracy of today with people speaking out and then the military where dissent was never the issue. Now, let's try to look at what has happened. Abacha was a military ruler. When there was an election, all the political party candidates adopted him as a candidate to be president.
The 1 million man march.
There was a 1 million man march by Daniel Kanu, or whatever his name is. But there was also a 10 million man march in Lagos, organized by Gani Fawemi. Democracy allows you to air your view and not keep it in. That's one of the strengths that democracy has. When you talk about secessionist movement, democracy calls for dialogue. Okay, fine. What are the issues? Oh, you talk about marginalization. All right, come, let's talk. Let's settle this issue. Marginalization is the issue. You say yes. What led to terrorism? Did we have terrorism before? Was it not the same, the current president, Muhammadu Buhari, who dealt with the Metisini group Was that not in the 80s? Was that not in quote a terrorist group? When we mishandle an issue and it gets off our hand, we blame it on democracy. The Kabirus of this world wasn't all about in quote Boko Haram terrorist group. No, that was not the ideology. Now look at the Shiites of this world now. Each time they're on the street protesting, you've turned them to a terrorist organization. Until the court yesterday pronounced, 3 days ago, pronounced bandit, the government was hesitant in pronouncing those bandits terrorist group. And then you use soft handling. By the time it gets off hand, you blame it on democracy. Democracy does not harbor laziness, let me put it that way, or gaps. The moment insurgency group started, look at two governments, democracy. In the Niger Delta, there was a militant group, fully armed. What would have turned to oil for arms? Arms were coming to Niger Delta strongly. Expatriates were running away. Our oil exploration came down almost to zero. There was a president who dialogued. Came in, come on guys, let's sit down. Today, the militants in the Niger Delta suddenly just fizzled out. The same democratic regime. There was another regime, the same democratic regime. Call them quickly, what are the issues? Discuss, okay, fine. When people blame Gumi at some point, okay, fine, maybe because of the exposure and all of that. It is not too late. And there are certain comments you need to read in between the lines. These people were used in an election. They are not able to now see the dividends of that use. They've now taken it to arms. It's not too late to quickly arrest that situation and don't let it go worse. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't negotiate with terrorists. These are Western statements. Are you going to also call yours terrorists when, in quote, it is the environmental challenge that led to that terrorism? They were not outsiders.
But you know, there's something that's at risk here. Government wouldn't want to appear to be weak.
Yes.
So if you talk about this dialogue and this negotiation, at what risk? You know, because the tendency is, okay, this one decided to carry arms and government is now listening to him. Okay, let's go group ourselves again and have another kind of agitation, carry arms. Government will listen to us. So are we not to be careful with that?
So it suggests to me that the now late Musa Yar'Adua was a very weak regime. But I want to tell Umaru, I want to tell you sincerely that dialogue is a very strong weapon to undermine an upheaval. Dialogue. It is not a sign of weakness. And in any case, there are strategies of dialogue. They call it CCC.
The carrot and stick.
Obasanjo's carrot and stick. When you consult, you consolidate on that consultation before you confront. Yes. You don't, if you are consulting, they are not ready to consult. You try to consolidate, they are not ready. Everybody will know that the government has tried.
Late Umar Yar'Adua did the same. I think it was a carrot and stick approach.
When you refuse to, you are government. After God is government, I say that again. But the people that are agitating need to see that there is a carrot being given. If you don't take the carrot, the stick is inevitable. That is not a sign of weakness. But when you go straight to stick, you create an ambience where other people go inward and start perpetuating wrong. That is not the point to get to. See, Niger Delta would have been worse off if not present for late President Yar'Adua.
Okay, let's talk about our judicial system in a democratic government. They play a very major role. Yesterday, I would say day before yesterday, we had the story of a jailbreak in Jos Plateau State, and it's not the first of it. We've seen that happen, and a lot of people have said, look, in fact, this is our jails. You have a higher percentage of people there who are awaiting trial, who have not been convicted of any crime, and all of that. how instrumental is the judicial system, and how can we make it more efficient so that it doesn't even become overwhelming, just like we're seeing now?
Our report captured that scenario you just painted. If you go to a typical detention facility, or what they call now correctional facilities, you see huge number. I think that our report said about 70% of inmates are waiting trial. Whereas the law, when someone is arrested, within that jurisdiction, you present that person in court within 24 hours. That's what the law says. Or 48 hours if it's outside that jurisdiction. But in this context, when the police or whoever authority arrests an individual, the first thing is put that person behind their own bar. It stays there for 2 weeks or so. Then at some point, they go to get what we call the kangaroo papers, or I don't know what they call it, injunction, whatever they call it, and send that fellow
FIR also, first information, whatever they call it.
To quickly just
legal parlance.
So that you don't blame them. They quickly go arrest that from a magistrate or so, who signs that off, and then
to authorize the detention.
To legalize the detention. And the person who did that paperwork, a week, 2 hours later, has forgotten that case. There's another case on the table. That fellow in the correctional facility never get a voice. And that is a huge population. Those who were seen in crime areas. I would have been victim of one. I was found in a crime area, close to my own house. But I won't say it's luck. It was just privilege. The police had arrested me, thinking that I was part of. I said, this is my own car that I ran away from. It was like less than 200 meters to my own house. And the policeman told me that you're going to be thanking God, because this case is murder case. You would have spent your years in prison. And I imagine that for the countless number of young people who were found around those areas. The judiciary, first of all, is not the judiciary's fault, because most of these cases actually never get there. Again, it is the fault of the judiciary, because they have, there's what, I don't know what they call it, where, I forgot the name, where the chief judge usually go around facilities to hear cases directly and get people free. In my humble submission, everyone awaiting trial for more than a year should be set free. That will increase the
even if it's a crime, I mean, a criminal case.
If it's criminal case, is it in court already? For 1 year, that should serve as deterrent for the poor pace of that legal issue. If somebody is actually involved with criminal act, sincerely found, but you know, in our jurisprudence, you are not guilty until found so. You are a suspect. A suspect behind bar who did an action that is contrary to the state, sincere one, and you kept that suspect a year without appearing in court, the judiciary should free them. It should not make the police work better. But again, you are going to, if you ask the policeman or the police side, let me flip up to I'm not a police officer, it will tell you, the cases are too much, we don't have the personnel.
To prosecute, yes.
To prosecute, and that becomes another challenge. So there must be some level of, I mean, we've set up a lot of agencies, pro bono organization, even government pro bono organization to take charge of those kind of cases, but it never really hasn't happened.
So is this purely a case of lack of personnel to prosecute these issues, or is it a problem of corruption? Because I see a scenario where there's a possibility to say, okay, we are going to put you in jail, except you decide to do something. And to do something, you know exactly what I mean.
There is a personnel challenge. It's true. There's also a corruption part. Because the corruption part would then be, you know, there are some police officers, they talked about how many arrests you have made. It enhanced your promotion level.
Profile, yeah.
And some police officers, during the days of Anini, the dreaded robber in Bender State at that time, we later heard that the policeman who was supposed to be like the chief of arrest was aligning with the Anini squad, and eventually was arresting those who were anti-Anini squad, and he was earning himself a reputation. We know those, but I'm not too sure that exists now with the kind of police structure that we have. But that was a bane. It is not about corruption majorly, even though it's there. We won't rule that out. But the police number, how many police do we really have in this country? I'm told it's less than 400,000 for a population of about 200 something million. For what? In fact, in this country, and half of that number are with VIPs. Who does the prosecution? You go to a typical police station in Edo State 2 days or 3 days ago, in Isako area, a DPO was kidnapped. A DPO kidnapped. What's not the hope of a common man?
Now, if you look at the number of courts again, is that also a factor that contributes?
No,
to
there are
this
magistrate
congestion?
courts. They don't. There are again back to the personnel issue. The judges are also few. You get to court, the judge say, open up the file. He has about 150 cases to attend to. He's able to attend to 3. And court rise for the day. And if it's 2 months from today, these are human beings.
Let's talk about the symbol of democracy. You talked about the legislature, as very central to democracy, which is key. Over the years, in the last 20 years, what's your assessments of the legislative arm of government in terms of living up to its responsibilities? Because most of the cases or the issues today at the front burner, like these issues of agitations for, self-determination, the issue of restructuring, the issue of referendum and all of these are critical issues that are, before the National Assembly. What's your assessment of the impact of the National Assembly in the last 20 years in our journey to democracy?
I don't know this word, but I'm going to just say it. The legislature in this country has become hallelujah boys. They sing praises of the executive. They become almost like a rubber stamp, even though the current Senate president said they will not be rubber stamp. But we continue to see the dynamics flowing. They are not supposed to attack executive because they are all government. But they are supposed to play complementary role, but they are supposed to be on the side of the people. Right now, they are majorly on the side of the executive, no more on the side of the people. And the executive has also learned that if you starve them of fund, they'll be loyal. So you see time and time again, is either you push in money or you withdraw money. We know of a third-term bid that so much money went into the National Assembly.
The Ghana must go.
And the Ghana must go era. And before you know what's happening, there was a colossal damage. Until another Ghana must go came in to oppress that first Ghana must go. If there was if the second Ghana must go didn't come, apparently would have had a third term, maybe a fourth term, maybe what would have been like Nigeria and all of that. The National Assembly must truly rise up to the occasion. I agree with you. It is the National Assembly who should say that this part is marginalized. Supporting that philosophy and bringing it to the center. That was the idea. Bring all of the issue to a center point where we can have conversation. I have advocated before that Nigeria will never get it right until we are truly a federal state. Right now, Nigeria is a central government, Central Republic of Nigeria. There's no federal republic anywhere. The states are supposed to be federating states and not a state formed by the federal government. The way Nigeria is run, the states are formed by the federal government. So come to FAC. Let's come to FAC. Let's come and share the money.
The sharing arrangement.
So if we all come into Abuja, commissioners of finance or whatever, they come in and they carry a big cutlass and cutting the cake and sharing that, metaphor. That is the bane of Nigeria. Because we are all going to Abuja, there's not complaint that the cake you took is fatter than my own cake. Whereas your state has enough cake to feed the people of your state, you can't see it because of the peanut you go to pick from Abuja. I'll give you a good example. Our neighboring state, Nasarawa, endowed with so much natural resources that will solve Nigeria's problem. One state. Kogi State, endowed. Everyone in these states, no state is poor. Up to Yobe, Jigawa. Whereas because of the analysis of the FEC, they say, no, these states are poor because of the money they earn from the federation account. Unknown to these governors are no longer interested in what they are standing on. Everything is 10 billion is coming this month. Okay, 10 billion. Okay, 10 billion. Or I will pay salary. No thought of how to utilize whatever comes from the center to develop what is underneath. Every state, I repeat, every state of this country has got something to add to the center. And that's what makes countries like the United States. We talk about the United States too easily. If you go to Kansas, for example, where you have oil and all of that, they pay royalty to the center. The resources is for them. Connecticut, one of the smallest states close to New York, by the side of New York, a small state. This federal government, we need to support that kind of state that has limited resources. You don't need to come to the center and share. Rivers and Co and all of the states that have oil, the federal government can take royalty from them and support states like Nasarawa to build its own base. What of Zamfara?
Now
the gold mine.
Now, to do that, you need visionary leaders. To do that, you need leaders who have the interest of the people at heart. All the things that you are talking about. Some people have faulted the recruitment process.
Yes.
Of emerging into political offices, and from 1999 to date, our electoral process. In your report, what were the things that you observed, and how can we improve the electoral process to make sure that only credible people, emerge?
By the time we move from the primordial culture now to the civic culture where people converge in Abuja, there was a change of orientation for many people. Election was not the only way to become rich. Before 1999, or immediately after 1999, those who were big boys of these cities were those who work in either Chevron, Snowbedger, these oil guys. But today, somebody comes to you and says he's a staff of Snowbedger. He's poor. You don't even, but somebody comes here and says, I'm a councillor representing, big boy. We've changed, our mentality has changed completely. The way our revenue mobilization and revenue fiscal sharing is happening has undermined the critical sector of this country. Then how do we improve our elections? Good news to the Electoral Act 2021 before Mr. President. I believe President Buhari will sign because he said he will give Nigeria a good electoral regime. Why is it going to be good? We have talked, there's been an argument about direct primaries, which is fundamental. People say, no, but they've been operating direct primaries. What happened? For example, in Anambra State, the guy who got 200 something thousand votes eventually scored about less than 4,000. Is it 40,000? Yeah, about 40,000 votes. 230 something thousand he got from direct primaries of his party. Scoring in the general election less than 50,000 votes. That's questionable. That is not the problem of direct primaries. It's because the people want to use direct primary to undermine the party. They know that if they use the indirect primary system, they may not get away with what they want to get away with. So they say, no, our party also do direct primaries. Let's do direct primaries. They don't do direct primaries in the manner that it should be done. The direct primaries is at the ward level. The ward chair have a responsibility to play. Each candidate will have agents across the world. That's not what is happening. Lagos did the same thing. It was a scam where people just show up with a card at the gate. You allow them in, and the other person, no, go back. It was an avenue to say, no, you see, we run direct primaries. That's not direct primaries. The direct primary system is giving every member of the party the opportunity to decide who they believe should be their leader. That's a selection process that will improve our democratic architecture. The way it is now, parties, there's what we call, in parties, they call it consensus. We have agreed.
Option, yes.
We have agreed. They will now go to the public to go and do indirect primaries. And say, no, we have done direct primaries. So meanwhile, people have been stepped down. People have bought their way.
Yeah.
That's not the system. And that's why the parties are crying. If the parties are crying, we should go for direct primaries. Because they know, if we operate direct primaries, only those that is on the will of the people will emerge in the general election, and then will become our leaders eventually.
Yeah, you talked about the institutions earlier on, democratic institutions. You talk about the role, being played, for instance, by the electoral umpire, the security agencies were critical to electioneering process. How do we make them efficient, so that we can consolidate this democratic experience?
I'll take that from Anambra election. Very good. For the first time in our election, the civil society didn't have any problem with the security architecture. Not the army, not the police, not the civil defense, for the first time. In the same election that was supposed to be like a no election, Anambra, the police played by the rule. The rule of engagement was at the highest level. That is exactly the way to go. Good thing was that maybe because we have people in the hierarchy of the police who thought that you don't use the police to manifest in this direction. Unlike previously, a day to election, you see DSS invading the house of an opposition candidate and arresting them all. It didn't happen in Anambra State. In a dual election, we saw it. Plain-clothed police officers, maybe DSS, maybe CID or whatever, but plain-clothed invaded the house of a senior political officer, political actor, and arrested them. Arrested the court, bringing the morale of the supporters to naught. It's a strategy. It can be called divide and rule. Break in, scatter them. They will be disarrayed. Then the man you want to win will eventually emerge winner. If the police, we look up to Ekiti, the police, the DSS, playing by the rule. The police have told us. Frank Uba had a meeting, CP, Commissioner of Police, this purpose to the police. 3 days before the Anambra election, there was a meeting he had for the very first time in the history of elections. A meeting with the civil society and critical media. Now, let's talk. What are the issues? One of the issues was human rights abuse. The police arresting people on election day. The police seen as an enemy of the state. And we had an agreement. And they said, okay, we will play our part. And sincerely, they played their part. We want them to play their part in Ekiti, play their part in Osun, play their part in the general election. It is possible. The police can actually play by the rule. If there is no invisible hand of demand and supply from the back, when that happens, I said before that the president appoint the IGP. If the president says, IGP, I want this to happen, and he says no, he had one option, to resign. If he doesn't resign, he must do the bid. If he doesn't do the bid, he'll be sacked.
Well, well, we have to end the discussion here. Very interesting discussion here this morning on the Democracy Watch report, how Nigeria fared in the past 20 years. And we have in the studio Austin Ayegbe, Senior Program Officer, Center for Democracy and Development, the civil society organization that released that report. Thank you so much for coming. We look forward to having you again.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, we'll take a short break now, and then when we come back, we'll be wrapping up the show. Please stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the TrustTV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search TrustTV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, thank you for staying with us. It's Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital. Sadly, we've come to the end of the program for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch up on our YouTube and also follow us across all social media handles. My name is Ayuba Ilya. We really are excited to have you join us today.
And I'm Shafiu Suleiman. Thanks for staying with us. I hope you've learned, very number of things, from our guests who have done justice to the topics.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye for now.